Greetings, welcome to Dungeons and GURPS. I'm Enraged Eggplant, and in this video I would like to talk about D&D exotic weapons in GURPS. If you have played D&D, you probably remember all the cool exotic weapons such as the two-bladed sword or spiked chain, but have you ever used one? Aside from some specific builds such as the trip-based spiked chain fighter, most of the exotic weapons were underwhelming. They did not provide anything interesting in terms of mechanics, and they required feats or other features to be used effectively. But what about GURPS? If you look at the huge list of weapons in GURPS Low-Tech or GURPS Martial Arts, you'll find that many D&D exotic weapons already exist in GURPS. GURPS in general does not have that many exotic weapons that require the exotic weapon proficiency perk. I think that's only the trident and the actual spiked chain. And the three-part staff, maybe some others. But anyway, the differences between weapons are much more pronounced in GURPS than they are in D&D, so these unique weapons really do feel unique. I went through almost all weapons in D&D 3.0 and 3.5 and checked for their GURPS analogs. If there was none, I made the stat lines myself. The description will contain links to blog posts and also a GCS library with these new weapons. So let's take a look at them. First, we have the Alchemist's Arrow. This is basically a variant of a flaming arrow. As you can see, it imposes -2 to hit. However, there is no -2 to hit it, there is a -1 to accuracy and, well, a poorer range. If it hits, it also deals linked burning damage. And that's pretty good if you want to light something on fire. The Ankos, it actually exists in GURPS. It's described in low-tech, but there is no stat line. It's basically a golden stick for elephants, if I recall correctly. And there's two variants, the blunt one and the pointed one. Let's check the table. I think it's used with the short sword skill. You see Ankos and spiked Ankos. The only difference is this one being impaling. There is no difference in cost even. And the 2 footnote means that it has a hook. The Annolat is a throwing weapon. It's an exotic one. Well, it is very thin, and you can make it curve somewhat in flight. This allows the wielder to ignore -2 of the total penalty for cover, intervening figures, and target posture. This is taken from Gun Fu, from the curved bullet perk. I do not remember what it's called. So it's on the ranged weapon table. Thrown weapon disc. This specialty was introduced in GURPS Low-Tech. It does not exist in the basic set. It doesn't deal that much damage. It's a light weapon, but it still deals thrust damage and has some nice features, I guess. The arquebus is just a gun with slightly changed damage values. Do not take it into account. The barbed bolas is just a bolas with some extra damage and I think extra weight or something. And probably extra cost as well. You can use it as a thrown weapon. I also didn't know that bolas has no default. I find that weird. Still does only thrust crushing damage, not impaling or anything else like that. And you can use it as a flail. Where is the flail? There it is. 7 and 9 means that it is a flail and it can be thrown. Barbed dagger. By the way, some of these weapons were designed using the weapon modification rules from GURPS Low-Tech Companion 2. For example, the Ankus is just, I think, a stick or a short staff with what? With a hook. So the barbed dagger. This is a weapon from Complete Adventure. I couldn't find anything, any weapon modifications in GURPS to allow it to do that, but basically it's a dagger that can get stuck as if it were a swing impaling weapon. It's both an advantage and a disadvantage, as you know, but it's still pretty cool. It cannot be thrown, I think. Yes, it's not a throwing weapon. Battle horn. It's a double weapon that consists of two large horns. I think it's used by the two-handed axe mace, yes. I do not remember, I think it uses the pick or a warhammer that is turned into a double weapon using the rules from GURPS Fantasy Tech 2 and made with bone. That's a material that is also described in GURPS Low Tech. And I ended up with this stat line. It can get stuck like a pick. And well, swing plus 4 impaling damage is very good, but 0.5 armor divisor is not. Bladed gauntlet. Basically this is an armored gauntlet, a plate gauntlet that has DR4 that also contains a blade. I think the bladed hand weapon is used at the base, so you can use it for swinging attacks, you can use it for thrust impaling attacks, you get a bonus for brawling, karate, or well, you do not get a damage bonus from dexterity. The bone bow. It's an oversized bow that fires exceptionally large arrows, and it has a spike at the bottom, well, at both ends, and you can use it to brace against a solid object. Doing that will require you a ready maneuver and increase your effective strength by 1. That's a pretty nice bonus, I think. It's cool. And where is the stat line? The bone bow does thrust plus 3 impaling damage, and it's a TL0 weapon. However, it is very bulky, it requires a lot of strength, and the arrows, I think, are more expensive. See, an arrow for a bone bow is $4. A caliber is another. Slightly changed gun, chain and dagger. It's a dagger with a 2-yard kusari attached to the handle's butt. So you use it as a double weapon in both hands. I think it's a pretty interesting one, and it's one of those that were created using the weapon modification rules. If you have a GURPS Low-Tech Companion 2, you can add the kusari to basically anything. It's just an example. Let's see the stat line. It's not a knife, it's in the kusari. And the dagger part just uses the dagger stat line. Chatkcha. It's a throwing weapon that is unique to 3 greens. And let's check its stat line. It also uses a disc weapon profile. It does impaling damage. For a thrown weapon, that's for a thrown disc weapon, that's unique. You cannot do that otherwise. Crescent Scythe. It's just a light double-ended axe from GURPS Fantasy Tech 2 Weapons of Fantasy. You also have rules for double weapons in GURPS Loadout Companion 2, but GURPS Fantasy Tech 2 is a newer version, and the stat lines there I think are better. There's also an additional technique there that is actually a little bit questionable. I think it should also be applicable to staves. Same for the dire flare, it's just a double-ended heavy flail from the same book. Dire pick is a normal pick with a longer shaft. And let's check it. The dire pick swing plus 3 impaling with reach 2. If I recall correctly, I used the normal pick and gave it a long handle modification from Loadout Companion 2. And you can use it in one hand, there's no profile. The double hammer is the double-ended maul, double khopesh. Khopesh, you actually pronounce it that way. I always used to pronounce it as khopesh, but that's apparently wrong. This double-ended khopesh can be wielded with either a staff or two-handed axe mace skill. Let's see the staff, that's the only new weapon that uses this skill, and the two-handed axe. It is quite heavy. So the double mace is a double-ended mace. The double pistol is a double-barreled pistol that I don't think it exists in low-tech. I think I came up with this myself. Or maybe it's based on the one from the Musketeer Pyramid. The double scimitar is a heavy double-ended falchion, and the Dragon's Blade is a weird weapon that is usually used in pairs. It can be used as a short sword, the stat line is here, they used to deal swinging or cutting or thrusting impaling damage, or you can use it in reverse grip to perform a cutting hilt punch. I think it's the brawling and dexterity. Use a hilt punch to deal thrust cutting damage. It's similar to a hook sword in without the hook. Gnome is I think it's a very interesting weapon. As you can see, it's a long spear with additional spearheads that curve backwards. So you can use it at reach 2 to strike with the main spearhead, and at reach 1 to strike at reach from these auxiliary spearheads, but as a reverse thrust. I made it a technique based on the what is it called? You know, the flail technique to hit the enemy from the back. I think this makes this weapon very unique. Then I have a Dwarven Double Spear that again exists in GURPS Fantasy Tech 2. Dwarven Orgrosh is a double weapon, it's basically an axe with a spearhead. I included both the normal version and the SM-1 version. You know, for dwarves. It can be used as a spear and as a two-handed axe mace. That's pretty interesting. Elven Cord Blade. This is a very long and thin. I think it's a rapier. Is it? Yes, it's a rapier that can also cut. It's very expensive. It's quite heavy, and you need to familiarize with it. And the Elven Double Bow is also something something unique. See, oh, a character who has 2 arrows ready may fire 2 arrows at the same target at once, with a -1 penalty to hit. That can be bought off with the exotic weapon proficiency perk. This increases the rate of fire statistic to 2 and gives the attack an effective recoil value of 4. So you have something of a rapid fire bow. Elven Light Blade and Elven Thin Blade are fencing weapons. The Thin Blade, I think, is a rapier. Where is it? Yes. It's a rapier that is very light. What is 4? It reduces penalty for targeting chinks in armor. I see. And the Light Blade is a small sword that also has a reduced penalty to hit chinks in armor. It doesn't do that much damage though. It's a light blade, but see how light. It's only a quarter of a pound. It weighs as much as a dagger. A foot spike is used for kicking. See, brawling -2, karate -2, or dexterity -2. It's a weapon for winged races. Galot is a that throwing weapon that you sort of throw along the ground. And if you do that, its range is increased. It's used by the throwing skill. Gnome Hooked Hammer is a weapon with a huge stat block. You can see it has a hammer head, it has a big head, it has a hook. So I needed 5 lines for it. And I also have an SM-2 version for the gnomes. And this is basically an oversized, human-sized version. Sickle, pick, sickle hook, and the hammerhead. It's a very versatile weapon, but it is also unbalanced. The gnome swordcatcher is basically a short sword with prongs. Yes. Again, this is just a modification from GURPS Low-Tech 2, Low-Tech Companion 2. A gnome quick razor is something unique. It's a fast flashy weapon favored by gnome bards. Okay. So you attack with it by flicking, snapping back. It's a bit hard to imagine. So you can draw with a fast draw +2 roll, but at the end of your action you must stow your quick razor in order to use it properly again at your next turn. So it's another fast draw +2 roll. If you draw a quick razor and simply wield it instead of using it as intended, it counts as a dagger, but at -2 to hit. Does it use a knife? Yes, it uses a knife. Stat block, and it can only be swung away. The god is a long, thin wooden pole. Use the pole arm, can be swung for some crushing damage or thrust for impaling damage. If used as a swinging weapon, it is unbalanced and also it becomes unready. And that sucks. On the other hand, it's a TL0 weapon. Great Falchion. It's here. Two-handed sword. I think I just took the Great Sword and applied the Falchion option from Low-Tech Companion 2. And Great Scimitar. Something similar. What is the difference? Oh yes, it is balanced, but it deals less damage on the cutting attacks than the falchion. It weighs less, still a good weapon probably. A gear spike. I think this is very interesting. It's a double weapon that is either well, sword or a flail. And you know, flails are always nice. It's basically the Kosari attachment, but better. Halfling skip rock. It's a thrown rock that also uses some ricochet rules. Pistol heavy sickle. I think this is a normal sickle with a longer handle, or no, I don't think so. I think I just improved the stat line and gave it more weight, and the Hydra gun is a 3-barreled arquebus. The Ice Checker is a crossbow that can fire icicles or javelins. It's very large and it's expensive, 1,000. It's bulky, using javelins imposes a -1 to hit, but throwing icicles has a 0.2 in armor divisor, which is not very good, but on the other hand, you probably can find icicles if you are playing in an Arctic location. Jowar is a two-handed sword that is, well, even bigger. It's weighted oddly, so it is unbalanced, but it deals even more cutting damage than a greatsword. It is also more expensive and requires 13 strength. Link's Paw is a rapier with a kusari. This is a rapier stat line, and this is the kusari stat line. Again, this has been done with modification rules from Low-Tech Companion 2. A Monopole, I do not know how to pronounce it properly. So it's a gauntlet with a blade and prongs. So it's the same as a bladed gauntlet, but with additional prongs that increase weight, cost, but give you a +2 in quick contest to disarm. Manti is a short spear that can be swung or used as a hook. Let's see. Here's the spear stat line. You can still use a tip slash. And I think you can use it as an axe mace to deal swing impaling damage, which is cool. Mercurial Greatsword and Mercurial Longsword use the Quicksilver options from GURPS Fantasy Tech 2. The musket is just a musket with some, I think, only reduced damage. Orc Double Axe. This is a double-ended heavy axe from GURPS Fantasy Tech 2. Orc Shot Put. The shot put can be found in GURPS Action 5 of all places, but it doesn't list a price, so I made a stat block myself. Thrust +2, 20 bucks, and paw range, 16 pounds. Panther Claw. It's a Qatar variant that favors disarming. Let's see. The Qatars use the knife stat line. A pistol, pocket pistol, quick blade repair. Okay, there it is. I do not remember the difference from the actual repair, That's probably something to do with weight and cost. Razor skip disc, like the glot, it is used thrown along the ground. So, and it's even more effective when thrown against the icy ground. And it does cutting damage. Where is it? There it is. Thrust cutting. A Ripper is an armor-piercing spear. There it is, Ripper. Thrust impairing damage with a 2 armor divisor. I think I made it using the armor-piercing variant from Lotte Companion 2 and applied it to the short spear. Retique is a spear with a hook, but it cannot be thrown. Where is it? See, Retique. Sapara or Sapara again. I do not even know if it's the real word. Basically, it's a smaller version of the Kopesh. It can be wielded with the axe mace skill or short sword. Yes, short sword. The Scourge is a barbed whip. It is better at entangling and deals more damage, but I think it requires more strength to use. See? Signal arrow, spiked chain. There is a barbed chain in GURPS Loader Companion 2, but it says that it is an exotic weapon, but it doesn't say how exotic it is. So I suggest to assign it a penalty to hit of -1. That can be bought off with the exotic weapon training perk. Oh yes, I think I called it exotic weapon proficiency somewhere later. I mean, somewhere earlier. What am I saying? It's early morning. Please forgive me, I'm still sleepy. The spring-loaded gauntlet. It's basically a crossbow gauntlet. It is used with a gun's wrist gun skill. This skill was introduced in GURPS High Tech and used only once. Probably there should be a wrist crossbow skill, but I couldn't be bothered to come up with a new skill just for this weapon. So I decided to go with a gun, even though this is not a gun. I think it's pretty cool. The stump knife is just a katar that is affixed to a stump. The Suglin. I think I used it the horn material for an oar or a halberd. So I do not remember exactly how I arrived to this stat block, but it was all used using low-tech companion 2 rules and low-tech materials rules. So it deals huge damage on huge reach. It requires a lot of health, I mean a lot of strength to wield. It is heavy, but it is a TL0 weapon. Tansutsu and Teppo are firearms. Thunder Arrow is an arrow that can deafen. Then a Tiger Skull Club. I think I used the round mace stat line. Made it with the bone material and added a hook and arrived to this stat block, Tiger Skull Club. And also a one-handed version. A Tumbling Bolt. It resembles a standard crossbow bolt, except for a few minuscule holes and vents along the shaft. The channel allows air to pass through the bolt, which causes the bolt to tumble when fired. The bolt deals +1 basic damage, gets a 0.5 armor divisor, and has its ranges divided by 2, due to the way the projectile moves through the air. So this is, I think, an interesting variant to get just a little bit more damage against unarmored targets. The two-bladed sword already exists. The whip dagger functions exactly like a normal whip, but when you crack it, you actually hit with a dagger at the end, and damage becomes impaling. And the winch crossbow is a crossbow that can grapple at range. It fires a rope and a pulley attached to a special crossbow bolt. The bolt is split down the head and center of the shaft, with the split head bending away from the shaft like a two-headed snake. The thin rope secured to each tip slows the bolt in flight. It has reduced range. Where is it? This? Okay. On a successful hit, the bolt snaps apart like a wishbone, taking the attached ropes past the target to wrap around and entangle it. After that, you may keep the target ensnared as per the lariat rules. The maximum range is limited by the length of the rope attached. I remember that this stat line was very difficult to come up with, but I think it's looking good. It deals just a little bit of crushing damage, but it also acts as a lasso, as a lariat. And have you ever used the lariat rules? I actually have once. That is an interesting weapon, but it's very janky. So, and that's it. As I said, the description will have links, and feel free to point out any mistakes. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.